everyone, it's another great day here at the Grow Together Homestead, and it seems like there's tons of people really into winter sowing this year, which makes me super happy, and I'm really glad there's lots of folks that have been trying it. I'm also really loving hearing all the great stories you guys have about collecting your milk jugs and stuff like that, so keep those coming. They really bring a smile to both Angus and my face. But I've had a few questions over and over again, so I thought it might just be easier to address it this way. Now, I know that lots of you don't have big areas where you can put out your milk jugs. You may only have a deck. So I'm going to show you how you can do this on your deck. And the other issue that people have had is they don't have snow. Even in some places here in Alberta, there isn't any snow right now. And the whole purpose of winter sowing is to allow for a slow warm up, natural process that occurs where seeds sort of come to life slowly. And if you don't have that snow insulation, some folks are worried that it won't work. So I had a bit of an aha moment the other day while I was collecting snow to save for my summer garden. I have well water here that's really highly mineralized, so I melted snow inside and I save it in jugs and other containers to use in my garden later. So I was filling up one of these jugs with water and thought, well, water maintains, when it freezes, it stays cold a lot longer, and when it warms up, it stays warm a lot longer. And also, when I worked in garden centers, we often had these things that were like insulating blankets that you filled full of water and you sort of put around your plants that you were worried about the changes in temperature causing too much problems. So I thought, why can't we do that with our milk jugs if we don't have snow? I did a little research and the theory is sound. So hopefully this might be helpful to you. Okay, so what I've done here is I've replicated what you could do if you wanted to put your milk jugs just on your deck. If you don't have any snow bags to put it on. There's still some snow on this deck, but you could do this on a non-snowy deck as well. As long as it's still cold at night, you could still do this, okay? Winter sowing, I know that it can take place at different times around the world, and a lot of people have been asking me, well, is it too late for me because you know, it's not really that cold? If you still feel like you need to put coats on at night and your ground's not able to work in your garden, you could still take advantage of this technique. And if you don't have snow, you still can. My number one recommendation is you don't want your jugs to be sitting solitary. If you want to maintain that even and consistent and slow wake up, it's best to group your jugs together. They're going to insulate each other a little bit more that way. So like I've got about 20 out there now. By the end of the season, as I'm putting my stuff out, I'll have hundreds out there, and they're all going to be grouped together in their snow bags. So I've got my 4 milk jugs. I pulled some up here that I've got in the middle here that are planted, and they're grouped together. Now around each of these jugs, I have placed milk jugs that I have half filled with water. Okay, so what's going to happen is these will freeze at night or in the day if it's cold enough, and if it create a little wall, a little insulating sort of hedge of water jugs, that will help to ensure that you're not going to have those dramatic temperature changes that can occur in places like Alberta here. And it'll help to insulate that soil so that it wakes up slowly the way it's supposed to. And those seeds will wake up slowly from dormancy the way that they're supposed to. I recommend that you only fill these jugs halfway, the lids on, because you don't want these jugs getting filled with all sorts of dirt and debris. You don't want to be affecting the light source that's affecting you. Want these out in full sun exposure. And if you fill these up full of water, it's going to cause a little bit less light to be able to penetrate. So I fill them up halfway. Okay. Now the other thing that this is going to be good for is this is heavy, right? And I know that a lot of people are worried about wind exposure. If you have all this stuff grouped together, it's a heavy mass. Particularly, you could also bungee cord this together. I wouldn't tape it because I'm going to talk about it in a second here. You are going to want to be able to take these ones out of the middle out, but just to keep it all squeezed together, if you think about it, that is going to be harder for the wind to have an effect on than some half-empty jugs full of soil, right? So if you live in a high windy region and you don't really have a way to protect your milk jugs that are planted from wind, and you don't have snow, you could use other milk jugs to protect them. Now I know this means that you're going to be having to go out, if you do want to do this, you're going to have to go out and find more jugs. I know, that's, I've heard some pretty funny stories about kids suddenly having a lot of milk in their diet because their moms want to get some jugs out here. But it is a way of making sure that you do get that slow, natural progression and that these won't heat up too quickly. So once the snow does melt and we don't have this anymore and it's warmer, that's, and if you don't have a lot of precipitation, I'm in southern Alberta, it does snow, but it honestly isn't that much precipitation. And these can dry out if they don't get enough rain or snow on them. So what I do is I just go, and then usually this doesn't happen for a while. This time of the year I don't really have to worry about it that much. But I have a watering tray, okay? And what I do is I go around and I lift, once the snow melts and I'm starting to see stuff happening in here, I go around and I lift these jugs. And if it starts to feel light, right, I know that it's getting dry, I fill a watering tray full of water, I pop this in, and I let it soak up from the bottom with the drainage holes that I put in there. I don't really want to use a hose or a watering can because honestly that doesn't replicate rain very much. It's actually much heavier and you could damage your little baby seedlings in here. So I really highly recommend watering from the bottom with a watering tray. Now a lot of folks want to place their jugs on a tray on their deck. You don't want to do that because what can happen there is you can end up waterlogging your soil. You have to have the ability for that melt off to happen. For if you do get a big dump of snow on this, or you do get a lot of rain, the drainage holes are in the bottom to allow it so that it doesn't become waterlogged, just like any good planting practice, right? So if you put a tray underneath that, like let's say I had them in this, I'd probably end up killing my seedlings once if we had a big heavy rainfall, okay? So I'm just going to quickly show you this setup in case you can't see it very well, and I'll come back in just a second.
Okay, so as you can see, I have my 4 planted jugs with the lids off in the middle, and I've got it surrounded by a sort of protective hedge or a barrier full of half-filled milk jugs of water. So this is what I would recommend if you don't have snow. Okay, if you have snow, you don't have to worry about this, but some of you don't, or if you have to do this on your deck, this is one way of dealing with it. You may need to get some more jugs though.
Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Please keep those questions coming, and I'll keep plugging these things out to you guys as they come. I am so grateful for the lovely Trudy Davidoff for exposing us to this wonderful method. She invented it years ago, and honestly, it's been such a godsend to me here on our little Zone 3 homestead. And I know this has made a huge difference for a lot of people. You don't have to mess with lights. You don't have to mess with hardening off. As we get to the point where we're going to be opening them up and doing the seedlings, we'll show you that too, okay? And we'll show you taking them out of the how to carefully transplant it, all that stuff. Just subscribe if you want to see that stuff as we get there. I'm going to be planting out a few more hardy perennials this week. Please do keep sharing your tales with me about this. I love hearing the stories. I want to see your pictures of your seedlings when they come up too. It just really makes us feel good here. And if you have other questions that you want answered, let me know. We'll make a video. If you want to see how this system progresses, subscribe. And I really hope that everyone will take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.